What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. And today we're going to talk about extreme muddy water. I'm not talking about the stuff that's kind of stained. I'm talking about the real heavy muddy water. I mean, stuff that I dealt with this weekend, the stuff that we're dealing with all across the country with all this rain and all the storms coming through this spring. So guys, stay tuned. It's something you don't want to miss. Guys, welcome back. So we're going to talk about fishing extreme muddy water. So it really doesn't matter what lake you're on. Like I always say, I can't speak for everybody's lake, but this is the stuff that I use to target those fish in extremely muddy water. So one of my first setups is a go-to for many people. It works very well for me. I've made a lot of money off of this. It's just a standard Texas rig worm, but I do stuff a little different. So one of the first things that I start out with, I have a 1/4 ounce tungsten sinker. I do go heavier if I'm flipping real heavy cover, but I got a 1/4 ounce tungsten sinker and a bobber stopper or weight stop, whatever you want to call it. And what I do with this, I get a tungsten and a glass bead. Okay, so the first thing I do, I get a red and a black bead. The red bead is a glass bead. I slide it all the way up on there, just like that. And then the next one is a black tungsten bead. Now, I know what a lot of people's thinking, why do you run glass and tungsten? If this tungsten bead was close to this weight, they will actually like connect to each other. It's like they're magnetic. So I put that glass bead in there. It gives it a different rattle sound, and it keeps that bead from being stuck to the weight where, you know, I can't get that noise. So basically, you know, when you're moving it up and down, you'll get that real loud clacking noise, just like that. So the hook that I typically run on all my Texas rig setups is a 4/0 Gamakatsu EWG. It's a super deep throat hook. And the reason I run it is I personally believe a lot of the fish bite closer towards the back of the worm, and sometimes I jump the gun a lot. And this hook definitely helps with hookup ratios. That way I don't have to worry about setting the hook too early or anything like that. So I'm going to show you, I get asked this all the time. Anytime we talk about fishing, what knot do you tie? I have no idea what knot I tie. I don't know what it's called. It's just a knot that I've always tied. My dad taught it to me, and I've just always used it. So, I mean, y'all might know what it's called. If you do, obviously go down in the comments and drop it. I'd love to know what it's called, but it's really simple. It takes just a few seconds. So you got your hook and your line. I take my line, run it through the eye, and then I go back through with my line through the eye, just like that, and you'll have a little loop. I stick my thumb through the hoop, and I bring my tag in out just like that, and I twist it around 5 times. Just like that. And then you're going to have 2 holes made with your line. I run my tag in back through both ends of my line. I wet my line, pull it straight down, bam. We're done. That's the knot that I tie. So the baits that I typically throw on this in muddy water situations is a bait that I throw year round, and it's a yum dinger. And I standard Texas rig it, and I vary in colors. And what I mean by that, if I'm working with really super muddy water and it's a dark cloudy day, I always use the black and blue dinger. If I'm dealing with bright sunny conditions and it's really muddy, I typically run the red bug. So I don't know if it's science behind it or what. We'll just call it redneck theory. I personally believe that it puts off a completely different contrast. So the black and blue will show up as a bigger profile, and it's easier to see in low light conditions. The red bug is a little bit, it's dark, but it's still a little bit brighter, and I believe in those sunny conditions it puts out a different contrast in the water and makes it easier for the fish to see, if that makes any sense. So the setup that I like to use, I like a 7-foot medium heavy Ducket black ice. That's typically what I run all my Texas rigs on. And I run a Daiwa Fugo 8 1-to-1 gear ratio. So, we're going to get in to some gear ratios and stuff like that in just a second, so stay tuned. So, typically, when I'm throwing the 8 1-to-1 gear ratio, it is with, like, when I'm fishing a open kind of flat area, not a whole lot of grass or anything like that, shallow, there's not a whole lot the fish can do to get me hung up. That's typically when I'm throwing an 8 1-to-1 gear ratio. That way I can take up a lot of line real fast. On the other end, if I'm fishing heavy mats or any type of heavy cover, I like a slow gear ratio reel. There's a lot more power in them slow gear ratio reels than there is in a high gear ratio. If you notice, every time you hang up a fish on a high gear ratio, it feels like a good fish. That's because the gears are smaller, they're a lot harder to turn. On a low gear ratio, it's the exact opposite. It's a lot easier to turn, you'll have a lot more power. So I kind of swap up between them two, and the pound test, in super muddy water, I'm running either 15 or 20 pound Seaguar fluorocarbon. It doesn't really matter to me. I typically throw the 20 pound if I'm in heavy stuff, and I throw the 15 pound pretty much for all purpose. So we're going to move on to the next bait. Okay, guys, so the next bait I want to talk about is kind of similar, but it's completely different. So if that makes any sense. So the similarities is, it's the same thing. If it's cloudy and muddy, I'm throwing a black and blue chatterbait, vibrating jig, whatever you call it. The black and blue, I typically run the Booyah Melee vibrating jig. It just has a completely different sound than a thunder cricket or a jackhammer or anything like that. I really like this bait in muddy, muddy water, especially when it's cloudy. Now, on the other hand, when it's bright and sunny, I throw the, let's see here. Let me get it off here. The Fire Crawl jackhammer. The reason I do that bright red, it puts out a different contrast in the water. I believe the fish can see it very, very well. It's got a black blade on it. You'll catch a lot of fish off of a Fire Crawl jackhammer, you know, during those muddy water situations, especially in the spring. I can skip this thing under docks. I can throw it near cover and stuff. The only thing I've learned about vibrating jigs is it and wood doesn't get along. Okay, you're going to get hung up a lot. So get you some pocket knockers and stuff like that. They work very, very well. Now, what I prefer to throw it on, I like the Ducket Black Ice 7-foot medium heavy. People has their own preference. Some people like to throw them on a glass rod. Doesn't really matter to me. I prefer a graphite rod because I like that stiffer backbone, but I like to throw it on 15-pound monofilament. That way I have that stretch if I do need it. But as far as my reel, I always use a slower gear ratio reel. I never go into a 7 1-to-1. It's anything under. So 6 8 to 1, 6 5 to 1, 6 1 to 1, whatever. I'm throwing a lower gear ratio reel. Just because I'm throwing these baits around a lot of cover, and I want to be able to torque that fish out of that cover if I need to. So, chatterbaits are a real great one. Another one that I really, really like. Now, I didn't really change the colors with this one at all. I kind of keep it about the same. It is a Booyah one knocker or a hard knock, whichever one. You'll kind of have to mess around with it on your lake and see which one the fish prefer. But this one right here is a Booyah hard knocker. I really, really like it for the muddy water situations. I think a lot of people use the rattle traps that has a lot of rattles in it. That's the reason a lot of times I throw a hard knocker or a one knocker, just to give them that different sound, because fish do become adjusted to stuff due to fishing pressure and everything like that. So what I throw it on, I like a Ducket Green Ghost 7-foot medium cranking rod, and I throw it on a 6 8 to 1 gear ratio Daiwa. Doesn't really matter what Daiwa you use or lose, whoever you prefer to use, but I throw a slower gear ratio. Because typically if I'm throwing this, I'm around grass and stuff. And once again, I want to be able to torque those fish out. But I'm always using typically a red color, a bright or a dark red, either one, it doesn't matter. You know, I mean, the fish is not going to pull up and stare at it and be like, hey, nah, I think that's a bait, I'm going to leave it alone. Either they're going to eat it or they're not going to eat it. So all these lures I kind of mix match and mess around with to see what they want. So another one that I really, really like, this time of year, especially when it's really, really muddy, a double Colorado. And I don't know if you can tell this or not. This is a Booyah spinnerbait. Now, this is not the Covert series. This is something that I've done for a long time, before the Covert series ever come out with. I do mine a little different. Jason Christie and them run a red head with a orange blade, and I typically run a red head, red hook, and then a small red Colorado blade. The reason I do that, the red just shows up very, very, very well in extremely muddy water. So typically I'm throwing this up close to cover or past cover and bringing it through to it, and then I'm just slow rolling it by, and most of the time it's just a reaction strike. Now, if for some reason I can't get them about the Colorado, but I feel like they're wanting a spinnerbait or they're swiping at it and missing it, a lot of times I'll swap to a 3/4 ounce willow bladed Booyah spinnerbait. Big gold blade and small silver blade. Or, you know, if it's already got the small gold blade on it, just put a bigger gold blade on it. Gold, you can never go wrong in muddy water. Silver, it kind of blends in and doesn't work that well. But the setup that I'm using is a Ducket Triad, 7 foot medium heavy, and I'm throwing it on the Daiwa 7:1 gear ratio. I do use a little bit higher speed on my spinnerbaits, just for the fact I cover a lot of water with them. I'm making repeated casts, so I kind of move my spinnerbaits a little bit quicker, sometimes quicker than I should. So guys, those are some of the baits that I use to cover in muddy water. So we're going to go over the places that I fish in real muddy water situations. All right, so now let's talk about, you know, muddy water patterns and stuff that I do. Where do I go to find these fish during muddy water situations? That all depends on seasonal patterns. So right now, obviously in Alabama, we're dealing with the spawn and post spawn. You're still going to have some pre-spawn fish, but they're few and far between right now. Or in my opinion, they're few and far between. I believe a lot of the fish is done spawned. It's pretty much over with. I could be wrong in some lakes. I don't know, but the lakes that I fish, from what I've seen and what I've found, the spawn's pretty much over with. We got post-spawn situations. So the places that I'm looking is the same places I was looking during the pre-spawn. So I'm hitting those secondary points and stuff, but instead of being in the very, very backs of creeks, I'm starting to migrate in the second part of the creek and the first part of the creek. So when I say the first and second part, I'm talking about the mouth of the creek and the middle of the creek. That's usually where those post-spawn fish are going to set up. And they're going to set up on like your boat docks and your channel swings and stuff like that. They're not going to be in real heavy current areas or anything like that in river systems. They're recovering from the spawn. Right now is the time that you're going to have that, you know, that post-spawn funk. They're going to be kind of like, just kind of laying around. They're going to be taking easy meals. So, you know, baits like this will help you cover a lot of water. You're not going to catch tons of fish, but typically the ones you're going to catch is going to be those big females that are recovering as long as you hit the correct area. So typically what I do this year, I'll pull up on a spot, I'll make about 10 casts. If I don't get bit, I'll move to another spot. I'm doing that all day. I'm jumping from one area to another, one creek to another, until I run into them. Typically on a river system, when you run into them, you're going to be on them. I mean, you're going to be whacking them left and right. Now, in lake situations, it can be different. You have to kind of fire up the school if there is a school there, or once you get that first bite, you start putting that pattern together. Okay, he was on a stump out here in the middle of this, set up on a secondary point, blah, blah, blah. There's no wind, yada, yada, yada. Then you go looking for that all over your lake. And typically, that's how you'll find a lot of big post-spawn females. They kind of set up on the same thing, or they set up close to cover where they spawn. So, well, not exactly close, but they'll be pushed off not too far from where they spawn. What I'm saying is they won't spawn and then move right back out to the main lake. Spotted bass are a little bit different. That's a whole other story. But anyways, those are kind of the places that I'll look for. So look in the places that you already fished during the pre-spawn. Look for just stuff that's different. Your boat docks that are different, ones that stick out a little bit further than the other, stuff like that. And that's typically where you'll run into these fish. If you'll swap through your baits and stuff, just try a bunch of different things. And eventually you're going to connect. And when you do connect, you know, you can start putting that piece together. Typically, I mean, I know a lot of guys, they think that we go out there and we just whack them every time we go. That's not necessarily true. A lot of times, you know, I struggle getting bites a lot of times early in the morning. But as the day progresses, I start catching a lot of fish. Some people, it's the exact opposite. They catch a lot in the morning, then as the day goes, they slow down, they get to where they don't get a whole lot of bites. And I'm working on that. I've been starting to catch them early in the morning. I've been catching them throughout the day too. So, you know, I got a lot of stuff that I work on also. But all this stuff that I'm telling y'all, this is just from experience, my experiences on the water. I'm hoping, you know, it'll help you catch a lot more fish. But like I went up to Wilson, let's say here Friday. Yeah, I went up to Wilson Friday. And we was dealing with really bad muddy water. The wind was blowing like crazy. There's a lot of boat traffic, a lot of people fishing. So that causes a lot of pressure. A lot of times these fish become hard to catch. With this quarantine and stuff going on, there's a lot more people in the water right now. So the fish are going to change with it. They're going to adapt. So you're going to have to adapt with them. So basically what I did up at Wilson to catch the fish that I caught, most of them come off of that Texas rig. Now, first thing early in the morning, I caught several off of the jackhammer, and I caught one off a Sprague rock crawler in the crawl color. Just one though, so it was pretty much retired for the rest of the day. But most of mine come off of that Texas rig. It's not a real bulky bait. It's got a little bit of rattle to it. It's not real eruptive. So, you know, maybe the fish doesn't feel like they're as pressured with that bait. So, you know, you just got to keep messing around. Now, I went up there to just to find smallmouth. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to catch smallmouth. But with the water being as muddy as it was and stuff, I don't fish for smallmouth a lot, so I don't know a whole lot about smallmouth. But I connected with three. All three of them got off. One of them broke my line. But after that, I went back to chasing largemouth, and you know, come up. I don't really know what a decent bag is on Wilson. I'm guessing 20 plus, but I probably had about 11 or 12 pounds. So I mean, it was a good day. We caught a lot of fish, but it just wasn't the day that I was hoping for with smallmouth. But guys, that's what I do in real heavy muddy water situations. You know, just keep covering water until you connect with them. I can't express that enough. Just cover water, cover water, cover water. And when you catch a fish, slow down and pick through the area, and you'll connect with some more. So, like always, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you think the content that I'm giving you is worth your time. Also, if you ever have any questions, drop down there in the comments. Drop a comment. I'll be glad to answer your questions. So, I appreciate y'all. We'll see you next Sunday.